With this handshake, hopes of full-blown armed conflict has been avoided. After the worst border violence in years, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan negotiated a ceasefire, agreeing to withdraw soldiers and military equipment from the border region. On Thursday, clashes broke out in the area surrounding Vorukh, a volatile Tajik enclave located within Kyrgyzstan. The hours-long fighting began following a dispute over a strategic water facility which several Kyrgyz villages depend on for irrigation. Tajikistan also claims sovereignty over an access road to an ethnic enclave which Kyrgyzstan disputes. Border guards and security forces on the two sides exchanged small arms fire, with civilian casualties reported from both of the former Soviet republics. In response to the violence, the Kyrgyz government swiftly declared a state of emergency in 3 towns and evacuated more than 11,000 local residents. Ethnic tensions and sporadic outbreaks of violence along the border, a third of which is still disputed, have simmered since the fall of the Soviet Union. The transformation from internal to international borders left several communities with restricted access to their home countries and led to ongoing conflict over control of natural resources in the fertile region.
Well, for more on this story, let's speak to Paul Stronsky. He's a senior fellow in the Russia and Eurasia program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you for joining us tonight here on France 24. Now, as we heard in that report, it's the worst outbreak of hostilities between the two countries since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Why are we seeing these tensions flare up now?
Well, these tensions flare up periodically. We've seen them earlier this year. We've seen them over the past several years. These are generally localized conflicts between local communities, ethnic Tajik communities, ethnic Kyrgyz communities. But what's remarkable about this is how fast this one escalated and how fast this one just spread. It spread to other communities, other parts of the disputed border, and it involved the security forces of both sides. So this is really quite unprecedented, and I would say it's probably the biggest violence we've seen, both in scale and the number of casualties, as well as the arms that were used.
And do you think we could see the risk of a wider conflict if these sorts of periodic attacks escalate?
That is certainly possible. Both Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan are two of the most unstable countries in the Central Asian region. Tajikistan is ruled by a authoritarian state. It borders Afghanistan, and Kyrgyzstan is the one nominal democracy in the region. But democracy has not brought stability. They just had a bottom-up regime change a few months ago, and so what I think we're seeing is a little bit of posturing from the states themselves, as well as a lack of distrust. Over the past year, we've seen a lot of concerns about just general human security, food security, water security, public health security with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think some of these feelings of insecurity are now playing out between ethnic groups and leading to a rise of ethnic tensions.
Now, Russia has volunteered to mediate between the two countries. What kind of relationship does Moscow have with them?
Well, Moscow has a good relationship with both of them. They are technically, Kyrgyzstan is part of the Eurasian Union. Tajikistan is not, but they all, both of those countries host Russian military bases. And both of those countries in normal times before the COVID pandemic, there was large numbers of migrants from those countries working and living in Russia. So the people-to-people and cultural ties are high and the military ties are high. And in many ways, the legacy of the Soviet era with these very strange borders that have left certain parts of Tajik territory inside Kyrgyzstan, it's a legacy of the Soviet era. And so, Moscow is poised to play mediator in some of these instances, which I think it's certainly going to be trying to do.
And as you said, there are parts of the border that are in these other countries' territories. I mean, is there a scenario maybe in the future going forward where, these borders will be better demarked or better delineated?
Well, we've seen that gradually happen. We had a very similar situation between between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and they have, for the most part, demarcated their entire border. I think they have 200 kilometers left. It's roughly, a third to a half of the border between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan that remains disputed. There are talks going on between the two countries all the time, and there's been talks on senior official levels, actually, between the three countries on trying to de-escalate tensions. This is a region where all three, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, kind of come together. But what we're not seeing is those sort of international discussions and international negotiations really break down onto local levels. So the tensions are high, and although those discussions on demarcation are ongoing, in some ways, many of these populations fear they could end up in the wrong country if the governments fear that they might sell them out. And so I think this is as these negotiations go forward, the bottom-up tensions are certainly real, and we could see further instances of this.
Okay, Paul Stronsky, thank you very much for your time. Paul Stronsky there speaking to us.